Why, hello there, lovely listeners. You are back again down the red rabbit hole, and we are going down a weird warren again. It's a
Dun,
windy one,
dun,
it's a
dun.
dark one. Lisa is here, you can hear her already.
Just adding into the sound effects. That's
Yeah.
just putting on my top skill
It's
in the
toxic.
rabbit hole.
And how you been, Lisa? You all right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm excited to go down a death weird warren,
Yes.
or a weird warren of death. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which way to put it.
Well, we're not alone because you captured a really great
Oh,
author this time.
yes,
So,
I
well,
did.
not that you normally do, but just exceptionally this time.
You being a bit mean to all our other authors,
Maybe,
Nicky.
maybe. So, with us today is the lovely best-selling author Sophie Duffy. Sophie, are you down here with us?
I am. I'm clambering down as we
Yeah.
speak.
Okay. You're coming willingly. That's good.
I really am.
It makes a
I
change.
entice her down.
Yeah. And so, Sophie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, okay, so I've been writing for about 20 years, and normally I write novels. I've had 6 novels published, 4 under my name and 2 under the pseudonym Lizzie Lovell, because that was rom-coms about booze, which was an interesting niche. And then a few years ago during COVID, I got breast cancer. And that led me to think, well, why not write about the thing I'm most frightened of, which is death? So, and at that point, I couldn't read, I couldn't even write fiction. So it kind of, I thought I'm going to give nonfiction a go. So, and here I am now, having finished it, and it's just come out. Yeah.
So, it's kind of cathartic for you just to kind of get everything out.
I think so. I think for me, when something happens to me, I want to read as much information as possible.
Mhm.
And so I Googled all the things I shouldn't have Googled. And but the information is power, I guess. And I just thought there's a lot of death positive people out there now. And so by death positive, it's like trying to not make friends with death, but face your mortality, and then that way you can get rid of some of the fear and live your life more fully.
And the book is called D for Death.
D is for death.
I think this one's going to be a laugh riot.
It's
Just talking about death.
okay to laugh.
Well, what's gallows humour? Because it's just made me think of, why is it gallows humour?
The graveyard humor in Hamlet, just before the big scene, there's the grave that the grave diggers have, the Yorick scene, the grave diggers have a bit of a laugh, just a bit of light relief before the big drama. So I think it helps us cope with big issues. The fact we are all going to die. So let's at least bring it out there, get it out of that warren, and talk and laugh about it. It's not to say don't take it seriously, because it is serious, but you know, life shouldn't all be sadness, should it?
No, God. That's if, what would be the point?
Yeah.
Well, I think humour is exactly that, isn't it? It gives a kind of release, and I think sometimes some people who are in professions where they might encounter a lot of death, like doctors and I think sort of funeral directors as well, can sometimes be people who find a lot of relief in humour and comedy and kind of making fun of things, and we don't feel like we should, and it's not that we're making fun of it, but it is bringing some light into that, because it is a very heavy topic.
Yeah, and I guess it's this kind of human survival mechanism as well, isn't it? And perhaps very British too, dare I say that? Maybe we have quite a dark sense of humour, perhaps.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for the kind of dark sense of humor. It's a particular type, isn't it? That um,
Yeah.
I think humor is almost like different languages. You know, some people like slapstick, some people like sarcasm,
Mm.
but I think gallows humor, kind of dark humor, is almost universal. Or is that too controversial?
No, I think that's a really good thought, and that would be another book, wouldn't it? Dark humour around the world.
Dark humor. Well, they do
Yeah.
like dark tourism,
Mm.
don't they now? Where people can go to
Yes.
places like Hiroshima and Auschwitz and places like that. And I
Yes.
I get it. I do get it because places do have a certain feel, and sometimes it's almost like staring death down, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's also, it kind of makes you appreciate what you do have.
Mm.
If you look at the worst that can happen, then it really does make you appreciate the small things in life. And that whole thing of living your life more fully without fear. So yeah, I've done some dark tourism.
Have you? Where have you been?
Yeah, a, a lot of graveyards and in Paris, in Morocco, London, all the big ones in London, and even places like recently I was down in a nuclear bunker in Cheshire. It's no longer a nuclear bunker, but it was during the Cold War.
Gonna
So,
say, you still glowing?
so yeah, there's definitely quite a market for it, and I don't think it's necessarily being voyeuristic, but again, I think it's just facing up to these awful things and realizing that you owe it to yourself, to humanity, to live a good life.
It's interesting what you said, Sophie, about kind of, is it a very British thing to engage in
Mm.
kind of dark humor? And it just
Mm.
got me thinking about some of the different cultural practices around death. Because often I think in some other countries, and I'm probably generalizing quite a lot here, but more open within perhaps mourning, like more
Definitely.
open with your feelings and how devastated and emotional you are, whereas in a kind of typically British funeral, it's quite sniffly, isn't it? But there's nobody kind
Yes.
of wailing and really showing the world how they feel about no longer having this person in their life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you're thinking of somewhere like Mexico with the Day of the Dead, and that they very much
Yeah.
continue their bonds with the ancestors. So though death is terrible, it's they know that they can carry on having a relationship with that dead loved one.
It's I think with those kind of, especially with Day of the Dead, and
Mm,
the Japanese have certain rituals, don't they, for their ancestors? It's almost like they haven't
yeah,
lost them. I think there's a big
yeah.
difference that they kind of think about. They think they have certain days that they think about them. They give them offerings. They're still in their lives, really, aren't they?
Definitely, yes. And in fact, the last chapter of my book is looking at some of the death cultures around the world. Because although my book's mainly British focused, because that's what I know, but I really wanted to open it up, and so I do look at some of those, like some of the African cultures will visit their ancestors, once every 7 years. It's called turning the bones, and they will literally take out the bones of their ancestors and then wrap them up very gently again. And it's so that just this so much more literally hands on with the dead than we are. Although I do think it's changing, and I think after a very grim last century of the sort of 20-minute slot in the creme, we're now trying to be more unique with our farewells, for example. So, there's more green funerals, more individualized funerals, and I think there's a lot more choice now so that we can, honor those loved ones in the way that's more appropriate for our relationship to them.
I've always said for my funeral, I want to be stuffed and put strings on me,
Ah,
and then they play
interesting.
Michael Jackson's Thriller and like pop me up to
Ah,
dance to it. I just think that would be hilarious, and it would just really lighten the
yeah.
mood.
Yeah, you might struggle to get somebody to agree to that, but
You can't
yeah.
see my friend Sophie.
Oh, right, I've not met your friend,
No,
so
Lisa's already got the strings, haven't you, Lisa? For your puppet work. She's all ready to
Yes,
roll.
I've been working it out. I'm going to fit some little eyelets each end so it fits together so you get the right movement quality. After the rigor mortis has set in, we want to still be able to make you move.
I've got the red leather jacket and everything. I'm ready to roll. A moment's notice, just in case.
But seriously though, have you thought about writing like a funeral plan? Like you might do a birth plan, which, we don't always stick to those birth plans. I know I didn't stick to mine, but I had the rough idea of what I wanted when I had my kids all those years ago. And now during the writing of this book, I wrote my funeral, what I would like to happen, and whether it happens or not, the way I'd like it, who knows? But it was actually very cathartic doing that.
Well, someone was talking the other day on one of the groups on Facebook, I think, about her partner had passed quite suddenly. And she said it's really difficult because she didn't have access to all the accounts. She didn't have the passwords. She didn't know necessarily all the details of the banking and thing like that. And was kind of using her experience to suggest to others that we should go and do this. And I thought, oh gosh, we don't have that. If something terrible were to happen tomorrow, I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know how to get into the accounts. I wouldn't know. And this is something we can do. And then part of me started thinking, is that because desperately avoiding it? Because you asking me that question of have you made any sort of plan or idea? And I'm thinking, gosh, if something did happen to me tomorrow, what would my family do? What would they perhaps wouldn't have a clue. And am I trying to avoid something? Am I really sticking my head in the sand in a way? And like you say, not facing up to and celebrating the fact that we are all going to die.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. There's an element of that, but also I imagine if you've got young kids, you're busy and you're just living your daily life, aren't you? But yes, it probably is worth taking out just a bit of time just to make sure your partner knows where those passwords are, or thinking about your digital legacy, who's going to manage all your social media accounts and things like that.
I mean, strangely, and me and Lisa have spoken to this before. I don't know whether you've heard about it, Sophie, but I have an "if I go missing" folder.
Oh, do you? No, tell me about that.
So it was pioneered by a podcast talking about how if someone goes missing and no one has access to their phone records or their bank accounts or anything along those lines, they can't track them. And it can take weeks to get the permission from data protection to actually get into anybody's information. So if I go missing, no one would be able to find me. No one would be able to track my phone or look in my phone, or they wouldn't be able to use my money to try and find me. And obviously, if I'm been kidnapped or dead in like dying in a ditch somewhere that's I've gone off the road, then I kind of need them to find me quick. And that paperwork is hard to get through. So that's what they said, that have an if I go missing folder. So you've got all the information of all your people to ring. So I've got like a little phone tree in there. So whoever gets hold of it first, it'll be like a scavenger hunt. Whoever gets hold of my folder first can then enact the
Wow.
plan I have in place to like ring everyone, because I've got friends who are ex-police, I've got friends who are in the judicial system, I've got all sorts of
Oh,
people.
wow.
So they can ring everyone, they can tell everyone that Nick's missing. The list was the last time we saw her, and people can figure out whether they've seen me, the last time that I was seen. They can get into my phone, then they can get into my phone records, they've got passcodes for my email and everything.
That's incredible. Wow, I'm very impressed with that.
And every 3 pages, there's a page of like a busy sort of street scene with loads of people in it. And it says, "Where's Nicky?" And she's in a red and white hat, and you've got to try and find her. Yeah, just to distract us when we're on our hunt
I'm
for
dressed like a
Nicky.
Michael Jackson zombie.
Yeah. Oh, I don't have an "if
Oh.
I go missing" folder, and I'm running my risk. You tell me the other day, Nicky, it's joggers.
Yeah, joggers are
What
very
were the
high on the serial killer vulnerability list. Hitchhikers
Ah.
and prostitutes.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I've only got one of the 3 so far, but give me time.
I, that's exactly my thoughts.
But what happens if you don't have friends in high places who are police or so I don't have any friends like that.
You've got to have a really busybody friend. Everyone's got that busybody friend who would
Yeah, I
really,
do have one of those. Yeah.
yeah, who would like get their teeth into your "if I go missing" file and desperately try to find you.
I can't imagine any of my friends would do that. They'd be like, "She'll come back when she's ready. She's fine." It'd be like a cat. It'd be like a missing cat. She'll come home when she's
When
hungry.
she's hungry, yeah.
See, I wouldn't do that. If I thought you were missing, Lisa, I would just spring into action.
Would you? So maybe you're my busybody
Yeah,
friend.
I am. I'm
You're
everybody's
my-
busybody friend. I'm nosy and annoying and organized.
And we're all very pleased to have you in our lives in case we go missing.
Yes, you go missing. I will fight.
Well, I know what I'm doing tomorrow then. I'm going to be assembling a file.
Mm. Well, it doubles up, doesn't it? If I go missing or if I die. It's all good. It doubles up for both things then, doesn't it?
Should have that on slash. Go missing slash. If I die slash. If I
Slash.
get abducted by aliens slash. If I never come back. If I never come back from this underground podcast I've agreed to take part in.
The warren is falling.
So, Sophie, you mentioned that through researching from your book, you had looked into some other cultural practices. What was kind of one of the deepest rabbit holes you went down?
Well, you see, that's the thing with death, isn't it? It's that I had to limit it a bit because it's such a vast subject.
Mm.
So that's kind of why I took that A to Z structure of the alphabet, so that each letter of the alphabet has a different aspect of death. So, for example, A is for accidents, and that's about sudden death.
What was Z?
Well, now I forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, but it's Zadushki, which is the Polish sort of equivalent of Day of the Dead. It's All Souls Day, so it's like November the 1st, and I think 2nd in Poland. Families will visit the graves of their deceased loved ones and decorate them, put flowers on them, and light candles. And it's also a public holiday, so even the younger generation who are perhaps not as involved in that tradition, they will still go home at that time. And sadly, it's one of the times where that most road traffic accidents happen because there's just more cars on the road. So that's a bit of a rabbit hole, isn't it? I started looking at that, and yeah,
That was from A to Z in
yeah,
very quick time.
Yeah, I was
it
gonna
was.
say, I'm terrible. If I'd have done like if I was doing that, I'd have been like, oh God, what's X? Xylophone mishap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, X was actually, I thought it was going to be the most difficult, but it ended up being quite easy because it's a couple of pages of just X is for the unknown. So, and death is the unknown.
Oh, okay.
And if you think there's so many, X stands for so many things, like in algebra, or X marks the spot, or X-Men, it's just one of those mysterious letters. So that's how I got around that one.
Wow, what an amazing tradition that is to just go and kind of celebrate and change our associations around like graveyards and places where the dead are, because it kind of got a spooky feel. Places, I mean, sometimes I think in this kind of country are often associated with places where maybe people who don't have anyone else to go might go and hang out. Or
Yeah, true. I mean, in medieval times, there used to be places where they'd have like fun fairs, or they'd graze their sheep, or they were very much communal spaces. And I think it was probably more like over, I don't know, as they started getting more full up and more smelly in the sort of Georgian era, where they were all, before they started building cemeteries on the outside of cities because there was more space there. And then we became a bit more separated from, you know, you normally you would have been born, you'd been married, and you would have been buried in the same place, but that we kind of lost that local connection quite often with that, with our particular graveyard, as it were.
come more, yeah, as you say, more on the outskirts of something, but also more like, that feeling when you walk into a graveyard. I remember kind of being told to be quiet,
Yeah.
like quiet down, like shush, like they're not going to hear me. I'm not going to wake anybody up. And I suppose there's an element of reverence there, isn't there? But also, I suppose it's amazing to think of it as a real community place.
Oh, and also now what they are brilliant at is sort of, ecology, and there'll be areas of a graveyard that the grass isn't mown because they want to encourage, the wildlife, the bees, the birds, and all of that. So I think again they're in a sort of transitional phase now, and they're becoming just more engaging, more welcoming places to be.
I've been to a couple of like local graveyards that were just absolutely fascinating in terms of, the way the kind of families are buried together and,
Yeah.
how they, and you can tell by the dates and it just, you can build up, as a writer, you can just build up a whole story, can't you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes. Now, I've read somewhere that when you have a date, so you'll have the date and then there'll be maybe a dash in between those two
Mm.
dates. And the story is all in that little dash so you can,
We are just the dash, aren't we?
so yes, it's great for a writer
The
because you
dash
get,
between two dates.
yeah, what happens in that time. Yeah.
Mm.
And I've seen there's been a bit of a trend on TikTok for people who go and might clean graves. So a grave that isn't well tended, they'll go and clean it and tidy it up, and then or they'll kind of seek out the person's story and see what they could find out about them, where they lived, where they've appeared on census and things like that to try and sort of piece together pieces of their life, which is almost a little bit like some of those traditions we were talking about of continually celebrating that person, that ancestor, like bringing back the bones literally or celebrating them on the Day of the Dead.
That's right, because they say, don't they, that you're forgotten only once somebody has stopped talking about you, or once your name is gone. So I guess that's a way of keeping that person alive in some way, just by doing the simple act of cleaning a grave. That's quite a beautiful thing, really.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And someone said to me the other day, and I hadn't even thought about this, but so Sophie, our books, because we're authors, will still get royalties when we're dead. So we, in our wills, we need to will those royalties to a member of our family.
Yes, I've very kindly done that for my children.
Mm.
Well, Nick, I'm right here. I'm not as I'm
My
not
death
as
puppeteer.
important as some of your legal friends. Um, but I'll need some material for the podcast after you're gone, so maybe I'll just start reading your books out on the podcast, like an audiobook.
I'll give you access to all my drafts. That'll be fun.
When I was sort of preparing and researching for this podcast, I started to think about some of those really, I don't know if we could call them, I don't know if you'd say innovative kind of practices, but things like death cafes that
Yes.
I'd heard about, places where, the whole ethos is to go and just talk about death, talk about loss and
Yes, I've been to a death cafe. It was brilliant, and I went while I was researching for the book, and somewhere in Cheshire, and I was so lucky because I met at this particular death cafe. I met a funeral celebrant, a funeral director, a death doula, two
Ooh.
palliative care nurses, and it was like my dream team. I couldn't believe it. But yeah, and basically
I mean, I hope they weren't in there kind of like touting for work.
I don't think
No,
so.
I just had a vision of just like a different type of Avengers assemble.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they were just part of that death positive movement, and the only thing, anyone can run a death cafe. The only thing that you have to do is provide coffee and cake, and that's literally it. So it's not a counseling session or anything like that. It's just a place you go to talk about maybe your fears about death, maybe you're grieving, maybe you've lost someone close to you, you're worrying about losing someone close to you. They're just places where you can say anything, really, and I think they're brilliant.
Mm.
Well, we need that space, don't we? Because when you try and talk to other people in your life about those sort of things, it is that, it's a bit like not wanting to make the plan for the funeral, isn't it? It's like, oh, no, no, if we don't talk about it, then it won't
Mm.
happen.
Yeah,
And I can imagine for somebody who might be facing their own death, it must be really hard to have those conversations with your family and to find a space where you can talk really openly.
that's really true. I hadn't thought of it like that. That sometimes the people closest to you are the most difficult ones to talk to. So talking to a stranger who's there for a similar reason is a good thing to do.
And talking about some of those people in the kind of deaf positive movement, some of those people you mentioned, like I had no idea there was such a thing as a deaf doula. And I've seen a lot of content on social media from palliative nurses as well, like talking about telling you about the process of death. and what it, and what will happen, and the naming of the different stages, and so there's sort of a bit of a social media kind of movement as well
Oh,
around.
yeah, honestly, it's amazing. I think because we've become so out of touch with death, because, since the NHS, people have tended to die not at home. So, hospital, maybe a hospice, nursing home. And so we don't know what death looks like anymore because we don't lay out the body at home, for example, like as it used to happen. So there is definitely a movement now to have more, maybe the option to be brought home to die or to be brought home after death for a few days before the funeral as well. And funeral directors will help you with that, for example, providing a sort of cooling and facilities at home. But I think that this movement on social media has really helped. It's really helped me understand what happens when you die. So, and also authors like Catherine Mannix, she's a palliative care consultant, and she writes brilliantly about and tells you exactly what a normal death looks like. Obviously, we can't all have normal deaths. Sometimes they are sudden and unexpected, but those that are expected, they do tend to follow similar patterns. And we're just not aware of those anymore because we don't see it.
Yeah, we don't talk about it. I think that's the thing, they're talking about it. Yeah.
Well, maybe this podcast will, make people start talking about it and, putting that information down.
Yeah, I really hope so.
Well, I've got lots more questions, but we are coming up to the end of our first episode with you, Sophie. Will you please come back and join us again?
I would love to
She
come
ain't
back.
going anywhere. She's staying right here.
Oh, well, I think it sounds like I'm being very polite today. It sounds like Nicky's taking over on the holding people hostage.
I'm very, very happy to stay in the rabbit hole.
Fantastic. So we will bring that episode to an end there. I thought I was going to do really well on this, and I've just stumbled up on it right there straight away. Oh, well, thank you for joining us, lovely listeners. Thank you for joining us, Sophie and Nicky. Thanks for being here.
It's all right. Pleasure.
Thank you.
We look forward to you joining us again next week. You can in the meantime, you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at the Red Rabbit Hole Podcast. There also, if you cannot wait a week to find out a bit more about death and some of the death positive movement and what that might look like, you can get access to the next episode straight away on our Patreon page by becoming a Patreon. And is there anything I've missed, Nicky? I thought I was doing really well, but I'm doing good until I went, "Is there anything I've missed?"
You keep questioning yourself. That's where you go wrong.
I shouldn't. What I should say, actually, Sophie, D is for death, is for out now, and our listeners can find it.
We will put it in the show notes.
We're going to
There'll
put it
be
in the show notes.
links
Okay.
aplenty in the show notes for Sophie's website, for her books, even her rom-coms. Just in case
Thank
the
you very
wants a
much.
little lighter.
Yes.
Or if you just want to take yourself on a bit of an emotional roller coaster, I suppose you just really go
Yeah,
go up and
experience
down
all
and
those
over. Yeah.
emotions.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.
Bye.